Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into one of the wildest comeback stories in tech history. It's a tale about failure, a little bit of revenge, and a mysterious black box that, believe it or not, changed absolutely everything. So, how does someone's biggest professional flop become the very thing that leads to their greatest triumph? Well, that's the story of NeXT. This was the company Steve Jobs built after being, kicked out of Apple. It was a commercial disaster, but it was also a vision so far ahead of its time that its spectacular failure became the secret weapon for Apple's incredible comeback.
All right, so to really get what NeXT was all about, we have to rewind the clock to a pretty dramatic moment. The day Apple fired its own founder.
This timeline really lays it all out, and everything, pivots on that one year, 1985. That's when this huge power struggle at Apple ends with Steve Jobs, just 30 years old, getting publicly pushed out of the company he started in his garage. But he didn't just disappear. Nope. That same year, he founded NeXT. And you've got to understand, this wasn't just about starting another company. Oh no, this was personal. This was Jobs setting out to prove to Apple and really to the whole world that they had made a monumental, colossal mistake. He grabbed a few of his most loyal engineers from Apple and got to work. Okay, so at NeXT, Steve Jobs' famous, or maybe infamous, obsession with perfection, it was completely off the leash. With no big corporation to tell him no, he could build his perfect machine with zero compromises. This obsession started with the logo, of all things. Jobs paid the legendary designer Paul Rand $100,000 for a single logo concept. And Rand didn't just email a JPEG. He presented it in a 20-page booklet, spelling out every detail, right down to the precise 28-degree angle of the E. This quote from Rand just perfectly sums up the whole attitude at NeXT. And the result of all that obsession was this, the NeXT computer, better known as the Cube. Seriously, this thing was a work of art. It felt like it had been beamed back from the future. The case was a flawless magnesium box, it had a storage drive that was revolutionary, and the sound processor was light years ahead of anything else out there. Now, to really wrap your head around just how far ahead this machine was, just look at this side by side. It's not even a fair fight, right? On the one side, you have your typical PC with its fuzzy 16-color display. On the other, NeXT's razor-sharp grayscale screen. While others had these tiny 20-megabyte hard drives, NeXT had a massive 256-megabyte removable disk. Built-in networking, a real multitasking OS, it was in a completely different league. So the Cube was a masterpiece. Critics loved it. But all that perfection came with a huge, huge problem. A starting price of $6,500. That's over $16,000 in today's money. Yikes. 50,000. Just let that number sink in for a second. That's the total number of computers NeXT sold in its entire history as a hardware company. To put that in perspective, Apple sells more Macs than that before lunchtime on a slow Tuesday. So yeah, commercially, it was a spectacular failure. The universities he was targeting couldn't afford it, and businesses didn't really know what to make of it. But Steve Jobs, he was defiant, totally convinced that the world just wasn't ready for his masterpiece. So with the hardware business bleeding money, Jobs had to make a really, really tough call. He shut down the hardware division, laid off a bunch of people, and pivoted the whole company. The future of NeXT wasn't going to be in the beautiful black box, but in the software that made it tick. And this, right here, is where the story takes a fascinating turn. Because it turns out the real lasting value of NeXT wasn't the fancy magnesium cube at all. Nope, it was the incredible operating system that was running inside it. The company's secret weapon was this thing called NeXT. It was powerful and super stable. But its real magic was that it was object-oriented. Now that sounds complicated, but think of it like building with Legos. Instead of having to code every little button and menu from scratch, developers could just grab pre-made pieces and snap them together. It let them build amazing apps in a fraction of the time. And while most people never even saw a NeXT computer, they ended up in the hands of some seriously important innovators. I mean, check this out. The World Wide Web, the entire thing was invented by Tim Berners-Lee on a NeXT computer. The legendary game Doom, developed on a NeXT machine. It was the platform of choice for the people who were quietly building our future. So you've got this amazing piece of software just kind of waiting for its moment. And meanwhile, across town, The company that Steve Jobs had left behind? Well, it was in a complete nosedive. Apple was in deep, deep trouble. I mean, we're talking about a company that was losing over $1 billion a year and was supposedly just 90 days away from going bankrupt. Their Mac operating system was old, clunky, and crashing all the time. They desperately needed something new to survive. And then, in a move that nobody saw coming, Apple announced it was buying NeXT. Now, on paper, they were buying the Next Step operating system, but what they were really buying, what was far more valuable, was the return of their founder. This was Steve Jobs' Trojan horse back into the kingdom he had created. That failed software from NeXT became Mac OS X, the rock-solid, beautiful foundation for one of the greatest corporate turnarounds in history. And I mean, just look at this table. The numbers are staggering. Apple went from losing $1 billion to making almost $26 billion in profit. The legacy of that perfect black cube was the engine inside the iMac, the iPod, and yes, the iPhone. So it leaves you with this big question, doesn't it? Was NeXT a failure? I mean, by any normal business metric, yeah, absolutely. But without that failure, there would be no Mac OS X, no iPod, no iPhone, and probably no Apple today. It just proves that sometimes what looks like a failure is actually the most important step on the way to changing the world.